Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll talk a lot about the local sports. We'll talk about the New Orleans Saints free agency. Obviously, the New Orleans Pelicans getting ready to take on the San Antonio Spurs, trying to get back to their winning ways. You know, in a little bit of a streak here. Let's hope we get a little streak going. College basketball, big one last night. You wouldn't think it was a big one. It was a big one last night up in Baton Rouge between LSU and ULL. UNO a victor last night as well. We'll jump into all of that. We got a great panel. Well, these guys know how to break it down. They do it every day for a living. Lenny Van Gilder of CrestCitySports.com. It's got to be your go-to spot when it comes to sports in this town. You've got to be reading that on a daily basis. He'll tell you all about it. And my good friend Gus Cattengill of ESPN 100.3. Only bad thing about Gus is we're on at the same time now, okay? But I can at least catch the last hour of Gus Cattengill. I'm glad to hear that. You can check him out, again, noon to 3 on ESPN 100.3. Guys, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us as always.
Good to be here.
Lenny, we start off with you, my friend. Tell us about what I think is bar none, the best sports site in the city.
Well, the beauty, you're talking about conflicting hours and stuff. The beauty of the web is we're there 24/7, 365, and it feels like we're constantly updating things 24/7, 365 sometimes because there's always things going on, especially. There's been a lot of news out there this week, obviously, and, all the news, all the opinions you want from a lot of the top opinion givers in town.
Yes.
You can find it all at Crescent City Sports. And of course, our high school coverage is second to none.
Yeah, I'm telling you, folks, if you love high school, if you just love New Orleans sports in general, Louisiana sports, you got to check it out. Thanks for being with us tonight. Gus, welcome back. Good to see you, my friend. Tell us a little bit about what's going on over at ESPN. I know you do a little stuff with Tulane. Give us the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, first I got to think it was the last time I did a Tulane game. He was sitting next to me, and I was watching Brother Martin with soccer, right? Play a little something like that. So it was fun to actually see this.
Always got to bring Brother Martin in there.
Well, I mean, they stream it, but that's the whole point. Mediums change so much. And what's great about it, you go on that website, and it's names and people that you've known for years and years that have the experience, and more importantly, it's nice to know that they're still doing what they do best. And I know for someone like me with a little 15-month-old dude, it's at night when I can go and look at Eric's tweets or whatever you guys have to catch up on it, because it is a busy time. It's a fun time, obviously, as we are mid-March, getting towards the end of it. Free agency is underway, so the NFL is sort of mixing with basketball. The college is obviously March Madness, but the NBA is getting nice and juicy. Pels are alive, which we're going to get into. So there's never a shortage. It's always good. You know what I'm talking about, Eric. When the show ends, you're like, "How was this last segment?" And has it ended? So
when you got a show sheet and you haven't got to half of it,
exactly right,
which has been happening a lot. And but this is a great time of year, right, guys? I mean, you got March Madness, which is incredible, and then of course, not really Louisiana flavor in March Madness, but in the secondary tournament, you have them still alive at this point. And then you get into free agency, which again, really kind of all the focus on this town goes to free agency. And then, oh, by the way, the Pelicans are in a playoff run here. And you've got college baseball that's starting, and a lot of interest in that. So for guys that do this for a living, you stay really, really busy. And for guys that do shows like ours, there's just nothing but content. I mean, the content, it's not like the dog days of summer where you're maybe looking for something to talk about. plenty of to talk about
Yeah,
now.
and then the annual months of poking people back and forth when it comes to Major League Baseball. There's so many Major League Baseball fans in the city, especially that do what we do, from Trahan to Daniels. You got Cardinals fans,
Right.
Astro fans with Kushner. I'm a Cub fan with
fan,
Larry and
right.
Triplett.
I'm an Astros
Yeah,
fan.
I mean, there's so many fans. There really are a lot of Major League Baseball fans in the city, so it's always fun, always nitpicking.
No doubt. Well, we start off on a tough note. Tom Benson dies today at 90 years old, and guys, I'll give you guys a couple seconds to kind of reflect on Tom Benson's life, and then I want to talk about the nitty-gritty. I want to get into what we can expect going forward, but just a few minutes to try to talk about your memories of Tom Benson. Lenny?
Well, I really didn't get to know Mr. Benson that well. Certainly, just like all of us, we've had interactions. Obviously, all of us know a number of people in the Saints and Pelicans organization. It's a very difficult time for them, and our thoughts and prayers go out to the organizations and to the Benson family as well. But I would say that players and coaches aside, Tom Benson is the most significant figure in sports in Louisiana in our lifetimes. Without him, we probably would not have an NFL team here right now. He stepped in 1985 and bought that team when there was a lot of talk about moving this franchise elsewhere. Jacksonville in particular. And then obviously we know the situation with the Hornets, now the Pelicans, more recently, and he stepped in and bought that franchise as well. And, a real tip of the cap as well, to his wife, his late wife, or his widow, Gail, in that I think she really, in his later years, helped steer him in the right direction in terms of not just, I think it was her that wanted to buy the Pelicans. It was her that wanted to get back into the horse racing game. Some of the other things that happened and the philanthropic aspect, so many things that we see him have touched upon from his high school alma mater, St. Aloysius, now Brother Martin, to his college alma mater, Loyola, to so many other entities in this town and beyond that he was able to touch. Even going back, his second home, if you will, in San Antonio, he had made a lot of contributions to the University of Incarnate Word, who's in the Southland with UNO and Nichols and Southeastern. And of course, the Pro Football Hall of Fame is his lead contribution there, really allowing for some great things to happen up there in Canton as well.
Gus?
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously when I started covering the team really on a day-to-day basis, essentially, 99, 2000, essentially, I just kind of knew what I had read and heard and seen. So my early remembrance of him is the battle with the state and seeing how that went. Obviously, covering the team during Katrina and what happened afterwards, and knowing the NFL's commissioner stepping in and making sure that team didn't leave in different places. And I couldn't understand a lot of the struggles and reasonings you had that. I think the way I'll remember him is he's one of the most fascinating people I've ever seen in terms of, as Lenny kind of sort of hinted to or was going in that direction, is it's almost 180 degrees. It's crazy how it sort of works. I can't think of another figure that was as important as he is, because it is, right? That franchise, the Saints, the jobs would have been lost, just everything. When people always say, hey, let the team go, or when it was the Hornets, even the same thing, or the Saints, who cares, don't spend state money. You just don't realize what a franchise in professional sports mean. Absolutely, in so many areas. But he was vilified. People disliked him.
And rightly so.
And people called him a cheapskate. Didn't want to spend money in the early years, or he was mean to his employee. We heard horrible stories about it. Let's be honest. And that is not even remotely the same person that's being talked about now.
Yes.
I would probably say in those, the Lee Zurich incident, right? He's walking out of Baton Rouge, out of Tiger Stadium, fearing for his life. People did not trust him, did not like him. And now anyone that you can find, all they want to say is how much they love him. But he did it. You're absolutely right. You give credit to Gail Benson. Just how he treated people, from saying hello to everything else.
Yes.
There's so many different things that he did on the side, too, that we don't know. In terms of donating and things of that nature. But, look, I can't think of anybody else that is as important to the city because of that, because you have an NBA team and an NFL team set for a while now, I think, because of him.
I'm in a tough spot, and I'll maybe expound more on this one in another medium on my radio show tomorrow. I agree with everything you guys said. I really do. I'm old enough to remember when the Saints came to New Orleans. The Mecum years. I remember again that helicopter landing in the Gator Bowl with Mecum and Bum Phillips getting out of there, and the thought was the Saints are leaving. And then of course nobody knew who this car salesman was, for the most part. And all of a sudden he's able to be able to pull some friends and business associates together from Texas and Louisiana, and Edwin Edwards brokering that deal after the Pritzker Group out of Chicago, which was supposed to buy the Saints and keep the Saints here. They balked and backed out at the last minute. Tom Benson emerged. From what I understand, the way the story goes, the full faith and credit of the state of Louisiana was behind that loan that was made to buy the NFL team, and the NFL team was able to stay in the city. And what it meant in terms of Super Bowls, jobs, everything else that's going on. But then again, it got dark, as you mentioned. I mean, Arnie Filko is hired. Filko comes in, and it's a constant battle with the state of Louisiana. The dome's not good enough. Nothing is good enough for Tom Benson. It comes up, and he ends up getting a contract, the first contract of its time, in terms of a state actually paying cash dollars to an NFL owner to keep the team here. That morphed into, obviously, the contract we have now, and I'll get into that a little later, to the situation with Katrina, when I'm sorry, my house was destroyed, your house was destroyed, this place was underwater, and he made the proclamation that the Saints were going to be Texas' team, and he was moving to San Antonio. If it wasn't for the courage of Arnie Filko standing up and alerting the media, one of the persons, myself personally, and others, about what was going on in that boardroom with New Orleanians now that were sitting at that table that now are in charge of this team. If it wasn't for him standing up, who knows what would have happened. Tagliabue jumps into this. Obviously, you got Goodell jumps into this. They slow the process down. The Saints play in Baton Rouge because Filko was able to broker that. That morphs into an incredible deal in getting that dome done so quickly. Mm-hmm. And so all the individuals from Kathleen Blanco all the way down that were involved in making that happen. And the Saints are forced back to New Orleans. Now, I agree with both you guys. Since then, total turnaround. Total turnaround. Philanthropic like we've never seen, okay? Giving money away, again, rehabbing his image. But there was always a caveat with it, okay? Always a caveat. Every time he gave money away, his name had to go on the building. His name had to go on the field, okay? So to be remembered, just to remember Tom Benson. He did some great things in this city. I'm not going to say he didn't. The buying of the Pelicans, again, could be looked at two ways, in my opinion. One, I no longer have to be able to compete with some other ownership. I'm not competing for the small sponsorship dollars in New Orleans. They all belong to now the Benson hierarchy with the Pelicans and the Saints there. But you know what? I'm glad once again that he was able to buy that team and keep that team here. We're a small city that's getting smaller in terms of population, in terms of corporate base, and we have two major league franchises in this city. Yeah. It's incredible. We still are the destination for Super Bowls and Final Fours and NBA All-Star games, and that doesn't happen without Tom Benson keeping these teams here or being forced to keep these teams here going forward. So I'm split here. On one hand, I want to throw in bouquets and thank him for what he did, but as I've said before, it's hard for me to forget some of the other things that happened. And just because you go out in the last part of your life and you give away a lot of money and you turn things around, I don't think you just glaze over some of the other things that happened. May he rest in peace, and I'm hopeful that this is not going to be the beginning of something very, very volatile. And that's where I want to go with this now, guys. What happens next? The LeBlancs had all the leverage. The NFL did not want Tom Benson to testify. The NBA did not want Tom Benson to testify. They did not want to open up their books to the public. The family did not want Tom Benson on the stand, okay? They didn't want him to see where he was in terms of his mental capacity. They want him being cross-examined by some of the best lawyers in the country. Rita LeBlanc, in an interview with Sports Journal back in 2016, and I quote, said, "I will still be partial owner of the teams," end quote. I just wonder if this was not put to bed, okay, until Mr. Benson passes, and then now we'll see the reopening of this deal, where the LeBlancs come back in and try to wrestle control from Mrs. Benson. What happens with Loomis, Lauscha, Bensel, who are the hierarchy there now. We already know Sean Payton has said he will never work for LeBlanc. So what happens ultimately if the LeBlancs come back in this picture? And, you know, have they done enough, which is what they did under when Arnie Filka was there, to make sure they shelter these teams so there's no tax burden where they have to sell the teams ultimately, and that puts the teams in play to go to other places like Seattle with the basketball team, the possibility of this team moving to the Saints team moving to another city like a St. Louis that has lost a franchise. So a lot of moving parts here, guys. And I'm going to turn to your expertise to tell me what you guys think. And let's start off now with you, Lenny. What do you think happens next?
Well, I mean, it appears at this point that whatever happened over the last couple of years helped prepare for this day. And that you've got this agreement in place that has presumably already been approved by the NFL that, you know, Gayle Benson becomes the owner. There is going to be a management team that's going to continue to be in there. I don't think, like Tom was, that Gayle is going to be the one making any day-to-day decisions per se, but all of that has been set in place with the management team that is already in there. How is that going to hold up? Like you say, is there going to be another challenge of some kind? It's hard to predict the future, but at the same time, if things were done in a satisfactory way on the front end, that the family is still getting the money that they think they're, you know, entitled to getting. And when we reach this point, then again we'll see how it all plays out.
Right. Gus, you have an opinion on this?
I think what's going to be interesting is,
excuse me,
I think for anyone that thinks that today is, or tonight or tomorrow morning, Gayle Benson will wake up, pour a cup of coffee, and go, "Oh my, what am I into?" is grossly mistaken
I would agree with
and
that.
Underestimating probably how involved and influential she's already been.
Right.
To Lenny's point, this day's been seen coming for a while. Obviously, he's been struggling with his health for some time.
Yes.
Anybody that knows anything, when you have this kind of money, power, structure, things that are involved, and attorneys and people in play and a board of any business. I mean, we could be talking about Apple Computers or something like that, and they knew that their CEO was not feeling well. You think they're waiting to the day that he passes away to have a plan of succession?
Right. Sure.
Twofold, right? Because what happens, my question is what happens after Gayle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're fine now. The leases go into the early 2020s. There already is talks.
2025.
Right, exactly. There were already talks about extending that, tying in, though, as we know, a couple months ago, and we're coming up to it soon, right, where we're going to find out the plans as to refurbishing the dome or doing certain
With,
things.
by the way, Benson putting up that money.
Correct.
Right.
So that's already in the works. And again, not to sound ugly, but probably in most of those talks, in most of those board meetings, or most of the chats between the state officials and Gayle's doing most of the talking, or Lauscha or Loomis, the guys that they trusted the most. So it's not going to change from that aspect of it. And the little things you observe and notice, Gayle Benson was always very particular and very prominent in how Tom Benson was seen in the later years as well. From when they thought he didn't work very well, she drove him in the parking lot today. There just happened to be a photographer, for Fox's sake, to show him, and he's working, he's going. She drove him. If she had interviews, she was always there next to him. He was never alone. She was always managing his image, managing how it was. So this is somebody that's involved in the business. It's not like my wife who asked me, who do Pels play tonight? I'm like, I do a talk show. How do you not know? You know, so
sure.
I mean, that's my point. So I think they're good in that aspect. To your point as to what's going to happen with the LeBlancs, well, Lenny just said it. They already have been approved by the NBA and the NFL. Gayle Benson's the owner. They can try all they want. They can sue all they want. Both leagues recognize Gayle Benson as the owner. So the fight will probably be after in what happens from that standpoint. Also, the other business aspects of it. Didn't they do some sort of agreement and they settled? Because you have to wonder, Tom Benson has an empire of a lot of different things. Whether, you know, I know obviously he did a media group. He sold that off recently.
Yes.
Some of the dealerships as well. I think at the end of the day, Gayle Benson's going to focus on the two professional franchises, make sure they're here, because now we have to start looking at it this way, guys. what is Gail Benson's legacy going to be? How does she want to be remembered? Does she want to be remembered somebody that helps bring a national, an NBA championship, another Super Bowl, continue to make this a destination? Now this is her opportunity to continue the Benson name and to establish herself. Think about it. How many female owners?
Well,
in the NFL. So that's what I'm talking about.
You make a great point, and one thing you don't want is Georgia Frontiere, right?
Right.
No.
Okay.
No,
now, and I think that I will say this: I do believe that the powers that be there are smart enough that they have realized, and I think Mr. Benson was smart enough to realize in a succession plan that he has groomed Dennis Lauscher to take over this team, and that Dennis Lauscher will have a big say in what goes on forward. I'm sure, again, that he's trusted Mickey Loomis. He's trusted Greg Bensel. Those three guys have been a big part of this going forward. I'm sure they'll continue to be a big part. It'll be the interesting thing is again twofold. How much will Gail Benson be involved in the day-to-day, and then do the LeBlancs have a second bite at the apple now, one way or the other? And again, will that put these particular franchises in turmoil? And look, I would agree with you on this. I have heard and I have talked to people that have said the NFL and the NBA want the franchises in New Orleans. They need a franchise in the Deep South. This is the optimum place for it to be. Even though the NBA at times can be fledgling in terms of attendance here and people really focusing on the Pelicans. The NBA wants a presence in the South, and being in a presence in the Deep South, where are you going to put them, in Mobile? Yeah. I mean, New Orleans is the spot. So, and the same thing can be said. And then you look at the long history in New Orleans of the Saints, and it would be very, very difficult, I think, to have that for either one of those franchises to move.
And this is a destination where both of these leagues want to bring major events, whether it is Super Bowls, whether it is All-Star games, on the college end of things, whether it's national championships or Final Fours, whether it's league meetings, whatever it is. Not to say you can't do those things in non-NFL cities. The NFL meeting's coming up later this month are in Orlando. So it doesn't have to be in a league city, but obviously things like Super Bowls, they're going to happen in NFL stadiums. So, and hopefully down the road, New Orleans is next in line here, where we think it's 23 or 24, whatever it is.
You feel pretty confident about that, don't you?
I think so. I mean, as long as someone else is not jumping up and building another stadium, and we don't hear anything along those lines at this point.
You want to get ahead of Las Vegas, before they have a chance to be able to get in the mix here.
Exactly. And that would be that's about the only one.
Really.
And even then, I think that's, we get into a whole nother discussion there about Vegas. NBA took an all-star game there. It was an unmitigated disaster. I don't think they're going back anytime soon. What would happen, from a Super Bowl perspective, and that doesn't even bring in the gambling aspect, which is, like I say, a whole nother discussion because of what's going on in terms of, what is the Supreme Court going to do with legalized gambling? By now. Right, but apparently it's going to be later on this spring.
Yes.
I think the two things we need to remember more than anything else, guys, there's one very big difference between the last time we were a little nervous of whether or not we'd have the Pelicans / Hornets at the time or Saints. Viability and sustainability and success of the franchise. Since those times, the NFL has grown ridiculous amounts, right? Astronomical amounts.
True.
What are the Saints? $2 billion or something of that nature. The Pelicans are worth $1 billion.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Every NBA franchise, every single one, is worth $1 billion. He bought it for $350 or $350, right? I mean, so we're not talking about where it was before. The inducements and all that stuff. I need state money because we're in the red. They're not in the red. So when ownership's not in the red, I think a lot of fear is just based out of that. There's no reason for them to leave. The only way they would leave is if they sell it to outside. And again, you go back to legacy. How do you want to be known as? And if you're the wife of the man that's billed now as the savior of New Orleans, do you want to be the person to tarnish his legacy? So that's why I don't fear that aspect. Now, outside things of that nature, and then you go back to what the franchises want. The NBA, when they pulled the NBA All-Star game out of Charlotte, gave it to New Orleans like that because they knew they could do it, right? The NFL said, look, it's about the stadium. And as we talked about a little bit ago, they're about to redo that. Either lop off the top, make it better, bring it into the modern age, which they need to do. And once that happens, you'll continue to get events. So, like I said, I think they're good for a while. And you mentioned the trusted faculty that's up there. Gail's she's smart enough to know report to me. I'll be the face. I'll go do the talking and everything. You guys run it. I mean,
they've been groomed for it.
She's been doing it. Right, exactly.
They've been groomed for it. No doubt about it. All right, guys. Any final words about Tom Benson that you'd like to say before we take a break? Because I want to switch to the Dre's contract and everything else.
Right. I guess the last thing, especially as we sit here at WLAE, I mean, he has done a lot for the Catholic Church as well. And in terms of his contributions and things like that, I mean, obviously, man of faith, very important to him. Obviously, he doesn't meet Gail if not for a Mass at the Cathedral.
Right.
So yeah, that's where that all kind of came about. And even before then, certainly a man of faith, was educated, in Catholic schools and maintained that throughout, and has continued to support the Catholic Church for many years here.
Yeah,
no, I definitely would agree with that.
Met the Pope, right? I mean, so I'll look at it from this perspective, in terms of what an owner is supposed to do. And again, the turnaround. You cannot say he's cheap.
No,
he's absolutely, in the last several years, right? He's opened up the pocketbooks. They go after free agents. Same thing. Now, the decisions that some of the people make, those are personnel decisions.
Yes.
But Tom Benson has put some of his own money into facilities, building more over there on Airline Drive, doing things inside the Smoothie King Center, doing things inside the Superdome, like getting rid of the Atari Vision and finally getting the widescreen. So he has done that. So you're right. I mean, it's crazy when you look at it, though. But the last 10 years, he's been a perfect owner when you honestly think about it. He hasn't gotten in the way. He's let Loomis and Peyton do their thing. And unfortunately, he's let Dell Demps do his thing. But my point is, that's all you want from an owner, right? He's not Jerry Jones. He's not any of these other guys that meddles and gets in the way. The last 10 to 15 years, he's been a perfect owner in these two franchises.
I 100% agree with what Gus just said. God, I don't want to be Mr. Negative here, but I'm going to say, I've got to be honest. I tell it like it is. I got to be truthful here. All that came about because he has the best deal in sports. We have basically turned over the arena, and we've turned over the Superdome to him. Yeah. All revenue goes to the Saints and the Pelicans. When all revenue goes from those buildings, and then he has the ability to have the state fill up Benson Tower with office buildings that are paying a premium. Champion Square is handed off to him, and again, just the land is handed to him, and that still has never been brought to light, or the rent or backman has been paid on that. When that happens, you should be responsible to be able to keep the buildings and upgrade the buildings and be in a position where you're giving us the best amenities that you can have in that particular building. So it is twofold. And I've got to, myself, as I said, I've got to temper myself today, because when anyone dies, it's a horrible thing. And we pray for that individual, and we hope that again, that family can get through this horrible death. But at the same time, there are two sides to the legacy of Tom Benson, and I would be disingenuous to not again at least look at both sides of what has happened. And I'll talk more about that tomorrow on my radio show. I want to switch gears here, because we, again, as sad as this is, got some really, really, really good stuff to talk about with the New Orleans Saints, what they've done thus far in free agency. We'll do that next here on Inside New Orleans. Our guest tonight, Gus Kattengill of ESPN 100.3, and Lenny Van Gilder of CrestCitySports.com. I'm your host, Eric Asher.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Amco Fence, locally owned and operated since 1976. Fully licensed and insured and a member of the BBB, Amco serves both residential and commercial customers. If you're looking to repair, replace, or install a fence for security or aesthetic reasons, Amco Fence supplies wooden, metal, chain link, vinyl, and ornamental or automatic gates. Amco aims to satisfy your fencing needs. Amco Fence, 504-468-9559 or AmcoFenceCompany.com.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Gus Cattengill of ESPN 100.3 and Lenny Van Gilder of CrescentCitySports.com are our guests. All right, let's jump into free agency. Let's jump into the re-signing of Drew Brees. Brees signs a new contract. Total guarantee on the contract is $27 million. It's a 2-year deal. Actually, it's a 3-year deal, as I thought it would be. Multiple years, not just a 2-year deal. It's a 3-year deal worth $70 million total. It was originally said it was 2 years and $50 million. The first year, the base salary is $10.2 million guaranteed, $13.5 million roster bonus, which I thought was very creative on the part of both the Saints and Tom Condon because Brees is agent, because you can take that roster bonus and convert it into a signing bonus and then create more cap room down the line if the Saints need it. $3.3 million roster bonus that will be guaranteed tomorrow, which is the March the 16th. The cap hit in the first year, $24 million. 2019 base salary, $11.5 million. Roster bonus, $11.9 million. As due on the third day of the 2019 league year. The cap hit in 2019 will be $33.5 million. It can be lowered or restructured down the line. In 2020, that's the dummy year. Remember, there was $18 million in dead money, $6 million in every year that the previous contract was. They needed that to be able to spread out the bonuses and to spread out the dead money. That base salary will be $20 million in the third year of the contract, but it voids automatically if Brees is on the roster the last day of the 2019 league year. The cap hit for that year, $10.5 million now. Expect that to expand down the line. Guys, no longer can it be said that Drew Brees did not take the hometown discount. Right. No longer can it be said that Drew Brees did not create a contract that allows this team to go out and get better. He's been criticized for that roundly. Everyone forgets the first contract that was $60 million in 6 years, that he never complained once. And even though he was breaking records, he stayed under that contract and was a good soldier. Everybody wants to remember the negotiations for the last 2 big contracts, and the guy was the best quarterback in the league. He deserved every nickel he would get. Lenny, I'll start with you first. I think that this is a great contract for this team, the way it's structured. I think that Brees has gone out of his way to make sure that, it's a year-by-year thing for him, but that the team is in really good shape to add players around him.
Right. And again, how much money can he make in his career? Obviously, he's now well over the $200 million mark just as a Saint, and that doesn't include endorsements or anything like that. All of his business interests that are out there that are presumably bringing some money back in along the way, and he wants to win. Don't you think he wants to? Why is he saying he wants to win one more Super Bowl here? Mm-hmm. So he would be smart and wise to do something like this. He's still getting his, but he could have gotten 3, 4, 5 million more probably, and said, "Okay, let's get this done." And I found it interesting. I mean, maybe Zach Strief needs to get a little tip on the way out the door, because this deal clearly got done on Monday when Brees was in the building. He and Mickey Loomis sat down after Strief's retirement announcement and finalized this thing. And another interesting point that I'm not the first one to make this. It could have easily leaked out Monday night if that was done. He waited and made sure it did not get out there until Tuesday because he didn't want to take away from Zach Strief's day.
Huh?
No doubt.
Class act.
No doubt.
I think one of the things that's interesting, you go back to the 16th of January. It was the last day that you had locker room access for Drew. And he laid it out for us. He told us how long it was going to take. He was the one that gave us the date of the 14th. He was the one that said, look, I'm not going to use leverage. He took away his leverage by saying that immediately. And he went through the process of saying, look, they got to do the combine, they have to do Senior Bowl, they have to look at that free agent. He told us all the things. So we could have looked and saw that it was going to take. And it was funny because obviously, we were talking during the break there about clickbait here or there and how the national media, I mean, they have pictures of him in the Falcons uniform for crying out loud, or where will Breeze go and all this. I'm sitting there like, do y'all not listen to what he says and just understand? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. For starters, there's only really, 2-3 teams that would have made sense for him to go.
Yes.
If I'm going to leave knowing the emotional baggage by leaving a team that loves you and wants you and is rising, it better be good. Vikings, Broncos, I guess maybe Jackson, but really I would put those two. And really, it's about it that I can really think of that makes sense. I mean, the Vikings are going to be a good team next year, right? They're well coached, good organization, fans, whatever. So, but it didn't make any sense, I think. And I think one thing that we've noticed from covering them, right, his word and relationships matter, I think, to him. And he said repeatedly, Pro Bowl, January 16th, to anybody who would listen the last couple of weeks during the Super Bowl, he did national interviews. The Sean Payton trust in him. The team's trust in him. The fact that he is what he's done and they've built around him. And you saw him last year dancing after games in the locker room with players. He looked reinvigorated, rejuvenated. He's not stupid. He's got young playmakers on offense, a pretty decent line, up-and-coming young defense. He doesn't have to win it anymore. He doesn't have to throw 5,000 yards. And I think for him, he's like, what better and greater challenge than go do it and go out? They win next year, he's done. I think he retires. I think that's what he wants to do. So I wasn't surprised at all that it took that long to do anything. And again, I think for a while the parameters have been agreed to. It had to be between 23 and 25. It wasn't going to be any more than that. He's not Cousins. He's not Garoppolo. He's not any of that. So I think people just needed to relax. We kept saying, don't panic, it's going to happen. But yeah, when he's in there on Monday, let's sit down, chat, and sign.
So to your point, he has already told us it would be a year-to-year deal with him.
Exactly, which means if I win it next year, peace out.
Right. So people should believe him.
Yeah.
That, if I think I can go another year, I'm going to go another year. He'd like to maybe play into his 40s, but he's going to take it a year by year.
I found it interesting. He was asked in the conference call yesterday, Lenny, in which he said, I have an idea, but I'm not going to share it with you. I know what my plan is. And I wonder if that is, if I win, I'm done. Or if not, I want to keep going. I think he wants to end on the high note. He wants to do John Elway, right? I mean, he wants to win, hold the Lombardi.
Peyton Manning.
Same thing.
Yeah. So
you agree with that?
I could definitely see that. And look, he also, I think, wants to make sure that he's leaving the Saints in good hands.
That's a good point.
I mean, yeah, we've seen a little bit of backup quarterback shuffle. I think, obviously, we haven't seen anything that we can look at to say, what do you have with Taysom Hill other than a nice special teams player?
Right.
But
are you buying Taysom Hill, though?
I don't know.
Man.
I don't know.
Are you buying it?
I'll tell you what is interesting, right? Because, again, maybe I'm cynical.
Right.
But Breeze this week was like, look, he spoke highly of him. Peyton's talked highly of him. And Adam Schefter on ESPN SportsCenter is sitting there on Wednesday saying they believe that he will be the successor to Drew Brees. Now, here's what I hear when I hear that. They're trying to make other people believe that, so they're not looking at a Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson. Well, I still believe this team is looking at a quarterback in the first round.
That's where I want to go next, guys. I have never really been in favor of reaching for a quarterback. It is the detriment of all franchises in the NFL. Go look at the last 10 drafts and look at the quarterbacks that have been picked in the top 10 of the draft reaching, and guys that again, are now selling insurance somewhere, okay? The Saints seem to like Baker Mayfield. They're going to give a private workout with him. They met with him, obviously, in Indianapolis, had dinner with him from what I understand, et cetera, et cetera. Is this the year, considering you're drafting at 27, you feel like you're going to either be in the late 20s or in the 30s next year because you're going to be in the playoffs, maybe NFC Championship, hopefully Super Bowl. You don't have a second-round pick, which means you'd have to probably give up your third-round pick this year, which means you wouldn't pick until the fourth round. Is this the year they go up and get a quarterback?
No. I could be wrong.
No.
And here's what I will say about the Baker Mayfield thing. If you remember 3 years ago, I guess.
Paxton Lynch?
No, not Jameis Winston, I think it was. Private workout, brought him in.
Right.
They want to know everything they can find out about any quarterback that they're going to potentially play. And they're going they're going to use those opportunities out there if they get somebody in to find out information. So don't put any value into that.
So you don't think any chance they move up to get a quarterback?
Anything's possible.
Yeah, but
I don't think they've got enough ammunition.
No, they
to do.
don't.
What are they going to do? They're going to use next year's one.
Oh no,
let's say you got to get. If you'd have to get to probably early teens to get to Mayfield.
You would.
To jump ahead of some people who are going to take quarterback. That's going to probably cost you this year's one, next year's one, and maybe more. Yeah, right. Maybe that 3 as well.
Oh, that 3 is gone. That 3 is off. Though is going to be gone as well.
Look at what these teams did last year. Okay, now granted, we haven't seen Patrick Mahomes play anything but a meaningless game at the end of the year, and obviously Kansas City's hitching their wagon to him. They've traded Alex Smith to the Redskins. Were a couple other moves where teams made these big jumps up to try to get quarterbacks. I understand that. You've got to do that. We've been very fortunate here in New Orleans the last 12 years.
You kidding me?
In that regard. So you got to be able to find that guy. But I will tell you this: I got to believe that Sean Payton's pretty good at identifying guys. If you remember, if the Breeze thing had not happened, if Breeze had signed with Miami. He was very close to trading. It was either a 2nd or 3rd round pick to Dallas for Tony Romo. So he knew what he had there.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think maybe that is the way to go, is to go identify a backup somewhere and go trade for. It worked. Remember, I mean, it didn't work the whole time, but it did work with Aaron Brooks. Okay, he traded and got gave up a late pick and brought him in as a backup, and it turned out to be a great move. He was your starter for 6 years. So I think that may be the route to go, at least to have something on paper at a professional level, even if it's just workouts, as opposed to trying to draft somebody in the first round. I don't know. Look, one of these guys, one of these quarterbacks in this draft might turn out to be, the next big thing. But I think there's a lot better chance that none of them do.
Yeah.
I'm completely opposite.
Okay.
I've been doing it for the last 2 months.
Go ahead. Go.
For starters, to me, in the NFL, the absolute most important single solid player that you can have is a quarterback. If you don't have one, you have no shot at the playoffs. You can. You better have a good. You better have exceptional what? Defense, running back, something. Right? The Texans were in the playoffs 2 years ago.
Yes.
They had no quarterback because of injury. They couldn't win. I mean, Tom Savage is now with the Saints, right? But they couldn't win, and they had the best defense in the league. So the game has evolved and changed, that you just look at the past Super Bowl champions, you look at the past teams that have been in the conference championship games, they have one thing in common. The teams that move on have a shot there. Jacksonville, great defense last year, running game and everything. Blake Bortles killed them. You better have one.
Yes.
So that's A. B, have you looked at the NFC? Now, I don't know what Goff's going to do from here on out.
Right.
He looked pretty darn good last year. I was ready to call him a bust, right? Carson Wentz is an MVP. He doesn't get hurt last year with the ACL. He's an MVP. He's not going anywhere. He just has it. Kirk Cousins, with the Vikings and that defense, they're pretty capable. So those two, give me Goff and Wentz as 2 young guys already there. I better have somebody waiting and getting ready. My best case scenario, and my argument as to why I say absolutely, Lenny, this year you do go, is because you don't have a detrimental need that you have to go get somebody right now. The Saints in free agency so far are doing what I thought they do. You go plug in or beef up, add depth, right? Bushrod to the offensive line. You talk about the linebacker, which we'll get into more specifics. I know you want to do that. Point is, you can go do that. After what I've seen already in just 2 days in free agency, it absolutely is screaming they're going to go do something. They wanted to get tight end Jimmy Graham. They wanted to get a receiver in Jordy Nelson. They lost out. But what does that tell me? They're trying to address those needs in free agency. You have 8 draft picks. You may not have high draft picks, but you have 8 draft picks. This is a team last year that traded this year's second rounder for Alvin Kamara. And we all were going, what are you doing? You have 3 running backs. Okay, he's good. So, again, you're absolutely right when you started this conversation. You better not reach a bit. If you believe, to Lenny's point now, that you do find that guy, if Sean Payton believes and he has addressed, he's like, that's my guy, then you absolutely go get him.
Is it Baker Mayfield?
I think Baker Mayfield is somebody like that. But it's a surprise to, I think, a lot of people. Don't be surprised if Lamar Jackson is somebody they're keeping an eye on.
You see,
and I'll tell you why.
You tell me, my problem with him was accuracy.
I'm 100% with you. How do you fix accuracy, though?
A technique,
footwork, and things of that nature. Now, again, Who better to help you teach some of those fundamental moves than a guy? Now, I hear you. We have a guy that has, in this division, one of the worst footwork and accuracy issues ever, and he was an MVP in the league in Cam Newton. Some of the things you're seeing, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, Cam Newton in this division, Winston a lot of times, they're doing things that Lamar Jackson could also probably do, and I'm telling you, you know that. You've been out there. Sean Payton has always, his eyes get big when he talks about a mobile quarterback and something he can do. This guy's an offensive. You don't think he wants to see what he could do with that guy? And imagine Kamara standing next to him. He smacks his hands like Newton does, puts it in his belly, which you see 3 or 4 NFL quarterbacks do. Pat Mahomes is not your stereo, your prototypical stand in a pocket. Pat Mahomes is a mobile quarterback. And mobile doesn't mean he has to run. Mobile means he can add that element of extending a play and is accurate. And the guy is a cannon in an arm. So I'm just saying, I wouldn't be surprised if he sees something like that and Sean Payton's head goes, hey, that's a guy that I could do something.
Right. Now, with Jackson,
you
can get him at 27.
Right, you can.
Exactly
you can probably get him there. Now,
you might
run the
go
risk.
a little bit earlier,
you run the risk of somebody jumping ahead of you, much like the Saints were poised. They were going to take the linebacker from Alabama at 32 instead of Ramczyk last year. And, the 49ers jumped up ahead of them. So you never know if somebody might jump ahead of you. I just don't believe in doing what a couple of those teams did last year and going and selling out the farm when you've got a quarterback right now that's at least going to get you through at least the next year or two. You're not in a desperate situation in that regard. Interesting
dichotomy from both of you guys. I have never been in favor of it, moving up. And I still think that this team has needs, okay? I agree with you. They're filling them now. And what I said on the radio show this week is, let's watch free agency. And let's see if they go out and they are almost surgical in the way that they go and fill the needs. And then, as they've always done, then they look to try to get best player available in the draft. We'll see what happens. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about this year's crop. Demario Davis signs a 3-year, $24 million deal, $18 million guaranteed. He was with the Jets. He 1 year in Cleveland. Tackling machine, his best year last year. If you go watch film on this guy. Sideline to sideline, athletic. I mean, he is a sure tackler. He is going to push, if not take over from A.J. Klein and Manti Te'o. One thing is, he's durable. He just doesn't miss games. Lenny, I'll start with you first. I know you and I were talking off the air. You're wondering about the cost.
I'm a little surprised. You spent that kind of money, and it wasn't necessarily a glaring need. Maybe you got better at the position, but now it means you got to do something with those guys. And again, we got to get into what that does in terms of contract situations, in terms of dead money, all those kind of things. But linebacker was a position you weren't too terrible at. Now there were some injuries last year. Oh, no doubt. I mean, you could certainly get better there, and I think. Don't underestimate this. You were talking about last year, and you brought this up. The 4 teams that got to the conference championship games last year all finished in the top 5 in the league in total defense. So maybe we're seeing more of a swing to that in terms of, this is a copycat league. Okay, let's do everything we can to get better on defense. That was the one move that seems like, okay, where did that come from? Because the other moves that we've seen thus far have effectively been replacements for guys you're either losing or you've already lost.
Yeah.
I'd add this. I hear what you're saying totally. Do you remember what happened when A.J. Klein and a couple of the other linebackers got hurt? That defense was not as good, was it?
Marty had to come in and play.
Right, no.
And look, special teams guy. And Marty played his butt.
Played great. Right. Manti Te'o played great.
No doubt.
They're not the guys that they lost in starting. You have got to have athleticism and playmaking in this linebacking core. Now, I don't know what Alex Anzalone's going to give me. Right. I know Anzalone was put in as a starter, but I could definitely see a Klein, Anzalone, and this guy. Right? The beauty about Klein is...
been a pretty good linebacker with this team, too, though.
Exactly right. And you know what's great about him? I got depth. Because one thing we saw last year is that depth was tested.
Yes.
They were deep at linebacker, and they were so much better. And you saw the improvement in this defense in the first 2 quarters of the season because the linebackers made plays. And then when they started going down and started getting hurt... Dude, what did you see in that game in Atlanta? Just gashing in the middle. And I'm like, oh, no, here we go again.
And this guy's a tackling machine.
Tampa Bay. I mean, you're looking at these games towards the last quarter of the season, and the middle of the field was wide open. Why? Because the athleticism of the linebackers went down due to injury. So if I bring in this guy, I don't think there's a problem. That's fine. We have depth. I can rotate. I can be fresher. And you're trying to build this mentality of almost like the 85 Bears, dude. everyone. It's just there is no rest.
Right.
So on the offensive end, just because I see that guy subbing out, there's no drop off. It's almost like the Warriors in basketball. When the bench comes in, the lead goes up most of the time. You know,
Right.
I really think that. So I'm all in favor. Heck, bring in the Honey Badger. You know, they're bringing in Ndamukong Suh on Friday to talk to him. So that ought to tell you.
Yeah.
They have Cam Jordan, an All-Pro. They have Rankins, who's really good, and they're trying to bring in this guy who wants $12 to $17 million. So what does that tell you? Chips in, my friend, with Drew Brees.
Well, I agree with that. Patrick Robinson comes back, 4 years, $20 million, $10 million guaranteed. Gus, we were doing a radio show on the same station, and we were driving the bus to get this guy out of here. He goes to Indianapolis, then Philadelphia. I always thought when he was here, when they finally moved into the nickel position, that he found his niche, but he moved on. He comes back to New Orleans more of a finished product. Lenny, your thoughts on Patrick Robinson?
I think it's a good move. You know, we haven't heard a lot about Kenny Vaccaro in free agency in terms of what's going on with him out there. And I mean, obviously, the Saints apparently are not bringing him back. And I think while he's not a safety, I think that's going to help fill that void. You have to be able to get out there when teams get into four wide and make sure you've got guys that can cover at all those positions. And some guys can get on the edge and cover, you know, the receivers lined up wide, and other guys are going to get in the slot and cover those guys. And obviously Robinson has moved into that role. You know, was a key contributor for the Eagles in their Super Bowl run. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
4 interceptions for him last year, 14 since he's left here with the Saints, essentially. The thing that's interesting, right? So he's turned himself into one of the best nickel corners.
Yes.
And I think we have to absolutely start thinking of, when we look at the NFL now, right? You need 3 corners.
You do.
It's 3 corners.
Well, you really need more than that. But
right,
you
but
need
you
3.
have to have 3 starters is what I'm getting
No
at.
doubt.
Before it used to be like there's a guy that could be a starter, he's a nickel. There's so many sub-packages, you have to now have 3 across. And guess what? He's going to be tested. Because everyone knows where Lattimore is fine. We're going to test Crawley and all that. So they seem to be high on him. I still think in the draft you kind of look at it from that perspective. But think about it. They did not go after corners with the bigger names or the higher markets. I mean, Butler, no one's given him $61 million. I'm glad the Saints didn't do that.
My God.
Colvern was in the 30s.
Yes.
They didn't go that way. They went with the nickel. So that tells you how they feel about
And
Ken
they went
Crawley
with
and
players
his
that they were familiar with as well. And that was
Exactly
another
right.
part of
That's a
this.
good point.
I mean, Jermai Bushrod was brought back for somebody they were familiar with. Not just him, but Jeff Ireland as well and Miami. You look at Patrick Robinson come back, someone they were familiar with. Tom Savage is now being brought to back up Drew Brees, a guy they saw almost every year in practice when they practiced against the Houston Texans. Last year they played the New York Jets. Their former running back coach was the offensive coordinator with the Jets. So they got a familiarity with Davis somewhat, and Davis is a Southerner. He comes from Mississippi. So again, you're getting him to come back home. Quickly, because I want to get to the phone calls. We got some guys lined up that want to ask some questions. Tom Savage, your thoughts?
I think he's there. Hopefully, you never see him on the field,
Amen.
and that's what I wrote yesterday.
Amen.
Hopefully you never
You'll
see
mount
him.
to
But,
God's ears.
Right, but if something, God forbid, happens to number 9, is Taysom Hill ready? Well, let's put it this way: if he shows us something in the preseason, and when he's out there, getting a chance, and during camp, then Tom Savage might not be here, okay? But if not, if you don't think he's ready to be that backup, then you got to have Savage there.
Good deal.
Yeah, it's Hill's job to lose as a backup, and that's what pretty much I've got and everything. But at the same time, you need somebody to compete with them. And having 2 veterans in the quarterback room is going to help groom Taysom Hill even more.
All right, last one will be Jermai Bushrod. And if quickly, just give us your thoughts.
Makes total sense. I mean, Clemente was perfect. You have a guy in Bushrod that played tackle and both guard positions. He's exactly what you need at 33. He's a utility lineman. It's not wear and tear on his body. If you need me, coach, I can come in and sub for a play or 2 or for a game while somebody's hurt.
Absolutely. I mean, he's really developed more into that utility guy since he's left New Orleans, where he basically just played tackle. And he's the guy you need. I mean, he's a perfect replacement. Knowing they hope to keep Clemente, but at the same time, he got a chance to start now in Houston.
Right. You mentioned Honey Badger, Kurt Coleman.
Kurt Coleman makes a lot of sense from this aspect. Again, it just adds a lot of depth. They play a lot of 3 safety looking at defense. So again, obviously it's strange. I haven't heard anything about Vaccaro. I wonder if he overplayed his hand there too.
He may have.
Good move on my part. Now, I always like You did it with Klein last year.
Right, so do
Go
I.
into the division
So do I.
and take somebody away,
So do I.
and add somebody.
You're always
there.
weakening the other team when you
Exactly.
do that. Yeah. So, and plus, again, institutional knowledge as well. No doubt about it. Greg is in Houma. Greg, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Greg.
Hey, guys. I got two quick questions.
Go ahead, my man.
Number one is, what do you think about Kobe Fleener and what's going to happen with him? And the second question is a choice question. A, did Drew Brees take the deal only because he felt comfortable and didn't want to go anywhere? Or B, did Drew Brees take the deal because he knew he was on the cusp of winning another Super Bowl? Now hang up and listen.
I'll say both A and B.
Yeah, I was going to say yes. Fleener, I think you got to wait and see what happens.
Yeah,
I mean, if you could have signed Graham
right
at the right price, and obviously Green Bay went higher than what New Orleans wanted to pay.
$10
million? For a declining player, $10 million a year for 3 years is that's more than
crazy.
you need to pay. Okay, but look, it's what they say about this business. It only takes one person to establish what your value is out there. If they're able to land somebody, whether it's in the draft, as a free agent, whatever it is, I think Fleener is very expendable because I think they've liked what they've got. In the other two tight ends, they give you a little bit more of the ability to go catch some, but also to block because, look, this running game's pretty salty now where maybe it wasn't in years past. So you've got to be able to do that as well. And I think, like I said, agreeing with you, A and B on the Brees front.
Yeah, A and B with Brees. I mean, he's comfortable here, but also I think he does believe that he's on the cusp of winning another Super Bowl. The other thing, too, when it comes to Fleener, it's simple. I think you have to look at that medical issue with him. Remember, he left the year with concussion. Right. So I don't think you can cut somebody with that.
And that's why they didn't cut him before.
That's why I think he's still not gone is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I think they've absolutely – look, the fact they went and made a play – when Drew Brees told us on the conference call that he got on the phone to try to bring Jimmy Graham, that means your $7 million tight end is done.
Right.
I mean, that's how I look at it.
I agree with you.
And it just didn't work.
Right.
It just didn't fit. I don't blame him. He got his agent. Good job, man. You got it. It's just and it never fit. He never grasped the offense. It never worked. He was never that pass catcher. And again, I hate to say this, but I spent that Saturday when I had the quarterbacks, the receivers, and the tight ends doing that in the combine, and that crop looks deep, man. They got athleticism everywhere up and down, and in the third round, if not the first, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a tight end.
Well, especially now with Graham heading over to Green Bay.
No.
And look, to your point, before the first day of the NFL year, there was a $3.4 million bonus that was due Fleener. He got the bonus, and most people thought that they would, and they'd make him a post-June cut, June 1st cut, but they didn't, and a lot of it had to do with, from we understand, the concussion issue.
Yeah.
They could not cut him because he was still injured. We'll see what happens down the line here. Exactly. I understand from looking at the contract, next year is the better year to cut them because they have less of a dead money hit, but who knows which way they'll go. I want to apologize to the audience. We didn't get to the Pelicans. We didn't get to the college basketball. The passing, Mr. Benson, obviously took a lot of part of the first half of the show, but rest assured we'll jump back on that next week for sure. Lenny Van Gilder, Gus Cattengill, thanks so much for being with us tonight on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yeah, for sure. We need another hour to talk about the Pels, about Will Wade.
Well, you got 3 tomorrow and I got 2.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go.
Exactly.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. Also, statewide on Pelican Sports Television. That's 9 p.m. Catch me on the radio weekdays, noon to 2 on Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2, the iHeartRadio app. Listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com, where you can also catch all the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports. Those that have DirecTV, go to ericasher.com, and then the show will be posted there shortly as well. Also, special thanks to our guests, Gus Cattengill and Lenny Van Gilder. Also to Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Trey Lopez, also Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com.